Chapter 22. Later that same day, she wondered where she could find privacy in the house, away from the clamoring children, the questioning women. They had not seen her look like that before, lit up, transformed. They were used to her being a ghost, walking about doing chores, her mind elsewhere, listless, not particularly driven. Now they asked her questions, but she would give nothing away, her dreamy smile, her secret. When to find privacy in this house, a time of day when she wouldn't be needed, wouldn't be missed. Where to go, somewhere cool, dim, and peaceful. The television was her friend, the video of the talking baby coming to her rescue. Everyone watched, enthralled by the charm of the Travolta, the beauty of the new mother, the wise words of the infant translated in Arabic, white words across the bottom of the screen. Mahassan lay on the bed, propped up on one elbow. Hanan was on the opposite bed, a younger mirror image. Her husband sat on the armchair with Hassan on his lap, and the children were with their egg sandwiches scattered on the floor. Summer opened the door of the storeroom. The musty smell of a room not used, not aired, a smell of dust and rice. She switched the light on. A bulb dangled down from the ceiling. The dust coated it, gave the room a brownish dull light. Among the large sacks of lentils and beans, among the huge cooking pots that were only needed in special occasions, was the suitcase where her winter clothes were folded up. Her duffel coat, her lined skirts, her gloves, all the clothes she had worn in Aberdeen, the clothes Ray had seen her in. There was dust on the suitcase. With her finger, she could write her name through the dust in big loops. But she was here to write in response to Farid's letter. It was in her pocket now. She had carried it around all day. It was with her when Nahla showed the wedding cards to Mahassan during lunch while washing the dishes after lunch, struggling with Amir and his homework. It was her secret. She would put her hand in her pocket and feel it. She would take it out and read it at every chance. Every chance. Now it already looked worn out and crumpled, stained with kitchen water, egg from the children's sandwiches, Amir's fingerprints when he had tried to snatch it from her hands while she was helping him with his multiplication homework. She sat down on the suitcase. 4 months ago, that was what Farid had written. Ray had become a Muslim. He had said the Shahada in Farid's house in Stirling. Why didn't Ray tell her before? Why wait 4 months? To be sure. To make sure that he wouldn't go back on this? He was cautious like that. And now asking, it made her smile. She had an airmail letter pad with her, a ballpoint pen, 2 envelopes. She was going to write 2 letters in 2 languages. They would say the same thing about they would say the same thing but not be a translation. She wrote to Farid first, long and cordial paragraphs, greetings, hoping that his wife and children were well, in good health. When she finished, she folded up the papers, put them in an envelope, wrote out an address in Stirling. She wrote to Ray, 1 transparent sheet of airmail paper, a few lines. On the envelope she wrote Aberdeen, Scotland. Television music came into the room, the voices of me and Mama and Travolta. She unzipped the suitcase and looked at her winter clothes. She unfolded wool and out came the smell of winter and European clouds. She put on her gloves and then took them off, saw her tights. For a year she hadn't worn tights. Her henna-colored duffel coat, its silky lining. She would wear it again when she went back to Aberdeen, the toggles instead of buttons. In one of the pockets she found the bottle of perfume, oval-shaped, amber-colored. She opened it and breathed in, forgot the dust and the smell of dried beans and rice. She ran her fingers over a scarf that was too warm for wearing in Khartoum, its pattern of brown leaves. Tomorrow, early in the morning, she would go to the post office. She would buy stamps. The stamps would be full of colors, a map of the Sudan or jungle animals, an elephant, a rhino, a hippopotamus. She would hold the letters in her hand and in the sunlight stand in front of the post box, hesitate a little before dropping them in, then live day after day, get involved in the preparations for Nahla's wedding and wait, wait. She had written to Ray, "Please come and see me. Please, here is where I am." Chapter 23. 2 weeks later, when she dragged open the gate and saw him, they both laughed as if everything was funny, and she was not as shy as she thought she would be, not awkward. He looked older than she remembered, and younger too, more white in his hair, but looking young because he had traveled a long way and was not diminished or fatigued. He said, "I spent all day searching for the house." And that was funny too. All day searching for the house, her house. All day looking for her, and she was not hiding, not masking herself. She was wanting to be found. There were lots of questions for her to ask. What made him lose his way? Where was he staying? But they all seemed not to matter, not to be urgent in any way. Just the present, the black metal gate under her hand, warm and streaked by sunlight, dragging it closed again. Their footsteps on the cement of the carport, their clothes brushing the dust on Hanan's car. They stepped over Amir's bicycle lying on the steps to the garden. She looked at him, and the sun hurt her eyes because she had rushed at the sound of the bell, afraid everyone would wake up, and she had forgotten her sunglasses inside. This was not the usual time for the doorbell to ring and bring in visitors. It was after lunch, when the shadow of everything was equal to its height, and she had left everyone asleep, even the children. "Asleep, or else you won't go to Nahla's wedding tonight." She had threatened them, and eventually they had fallen asleep. She had to leave Ray and go indoors to fetch cushions for the garden chairs, a tablecloth. She had to move carefully so as not to wake anyone up. In the kitchen she hesitated. Pepsi or Miranda? Which would he like more? She would have asked. Now she had to guess. Pepsi from the fridge. Ice cubes, and she must not make a noise when twisting the ice tray over the sink. Standing in the kitchen with a tap running over the ice, thinking of the next step, a glass, a tray, carrying the ice outside. This was abundance after the meager time, the scratchy, meager time. In the garden, it was easy to talk. Pour the Pepsi into the glass and watch it froth, tiny sprays over the tablecloth. Then how it effervesced. Talk of the wobbly table, of the cooperative across the road, of Diane's now completed thesis. Vari fell off her horse, but she was all right. Though she got a scare. He talked about his new students, where they came from, what they were working on. "I am writing a textbook," he said, "an introduction to the politics of North Africa. I've decided it's time for me to write a textbook and not concentrate so much on analyzing current affairs." He drank his Pepsi, and the ice cubes started to melt, their edges smooth and light. "Is this what you do here?" he said. "Offer guest drinks as soon as they come in and not have anything yourself?" She smiled and nodded. That was the custom, yes. "Which airplane did you come on?" "KLM. I changed planes in Amsterdam, Aberdeen, Amsterdam. Then we landed in Cairo on the way. Transit for about an hour. I got here at 2 in the morning." He smiled and looked at her. You were asleep then. 2 o'clock in the morning, she was fast asleep, not hearing the plane that landed in the airport nearby. But later at dawn, she had heard the azan and got up to pray. Another dawn, asking for forgiveness, saying that there's no will or strength except from Allah, and not knowing, having no idea what the day ahead held up for her. Was it all right at the airport? Sometimes foreigners were given a hard time, their baggage thoroughly and slowly searched, a lot of questions asked. Fine, no problems. The conveyor belt wasn't working, so it took ages for the luggage to come out, but it was okay at the end. It was the smoothest trip I have ever done. It must be because my intention is good. She smiled and they were quiet for a time. He held a glass in his right hand, as much ice now as Pepsi. Why did you tell Farid to write to me? Why didn't you write to me? She asked without complaint, without reproach. Farid's letter had been useful, formal, correct, what she needed. She had been able to show it to Walid and Hanan and say to them, "You must speak to Mahassan. You must tell her because it would be easier for her if she hears it from you." I wanted to do everything properly, Ray said. I was afraid you were married. I wouldn't have deserved that. No, our next door neighbor is getting married. She still said silly things, unconnected things. What's her name? Nahla. It occurred to her that Nahla was a beautiful name, and it was beautiful that she lived next door and tonight was her wedding. The wide outdoor space of the Syrian club, noisy music, and a light wind, everyone wearing cardigans over their best clothes. Ray could go too. She would introduce him to Walid and everyone she knew. And Nahla is your friend? Yes, though she's much younger than me, and she's going to Qatar, where Yasmin is. Is Qatar a place you would like to visit? Someday, yes. Beaming, that was how she was, all over him. She should reproach him for the past, discuss with him practical things. Where was her brain? Yellow grass and the trees untrimmed, a smell she knew of jasmine and mud. I think, he said, we should not prolong this torture. What torture? He laughed and wiped his face with his hand. Torture for her were the days when she heard a worldly, logical voice saying, "Someone like him will never become a Muslim." The voice measured the distance between them. It calculated the probability that he was with someone else, a woman with lighter eyes, a lighter heart. I mean, he said, if we get married this week, we could go away somewhere. There would be a time because I don't have to be back in Aberdeen until the middle of January. I was thinking of Aswan. Have you been to Aswan? No. Her voice was a little subdued because she had remembered the bad voice. I haven't been there either, he said, watching her, the change of expression in her eyes. The high dam is near the town, Nasser's big project. I am told the south of Egypt is very much like here, in climate and terrain. It would be nice. What do you think? She smiled. It would be nice. You could leave Amir with your aunt and then we can come back here and all go back together to Aberdeen. She nodded, but it seemed to her complicated, going north and then coming back to Khartoum. It would have been easier that day in Aberdeen, the day of the snow. Her voice trailed. It was the wrong thing to say. He would not want to talk about that day. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. In the Quran, it says that pure women are for pure men, and I wasn't clean enough for you then. He looked up towards the house and Samar turned to look too. Dahlia was walking down the steps of the porch, looking sleepy, her hair sticking out of her braids. She came and sat on the arm of Summer's chair and put her head on Summer's shoulder. She stared at Ray, too sleepy to be fully curious. "Are you still asleep?" Summer asked her, changing from explaining to Ray who Dahlia was into speaking Arabic. Dahlia nodded and rubbed her nose. "Aren't you going to shake hands?" Dahlia shook her head. "He knows Arabic," said Summer. "You know Arabic, don't you?" she said to Ray. "A little, not very much," he said. "He can't speak properly," Dahlia whispered in Summer's ear and made her laugh. "He needs to practice more," she whispered back. "But you should be nice and say Salamu alaikum." Dahlia did, looking more awake, raising her hand a little. "Alaikum assalam," he replied. She smiled and sat up a little straighter. Her eyes caught sight of Amir's bicycle lying unwanted and available. They watched her as she walked away from them, her house dress crumpled and too small, the zipper at the back a little undone. She rode the bicycle slowly, out of their view, round to the back of the house. "She will miss you," Ray said, something final in his voice, clear to Summer that she was really going to leave Khartoum and go back with him to Aberdeen. She was going to leave Dahlia and not be close to her anymore. The day-by-day closeness, the eating, sleeping closeness. She was going to take Amir away from his cousins, his grandmother, his house. She was going to take him to a place that was all gray, its noises muffled by clouds, a new school where they might not like him much, look at him in a surprised way, and she was going to leave the city, its dusty wind and smells. "If I was someone else, someone strong and independent, I would tell you now. I don't want to go back with you. I don't want to leave my family. I love my country too much." Her voice was teasing and sad. He did not look taken aback. "You're not someone else," he said. A fly dived silently over the tray and perched on the rim of the empty glass. Summer leaned and waved it away. "It's too late now," he said. "I know." She had been given the chance and she had not been able to substitute her country for him, anything for him. "Ours isn't a religion of suffering," he said, "nor is it tied to a particular place." His words made her feel close to him, pulled in, closer than any time before, because it was ours now, not hers alone, and because he understood, not a religion of pathos, not a religion of redemption through sacrifice. He said, "Found out at the end that it didn't have anything to do with how much I have read or how many places I have learned about Islam. Knowledge is necessary. That's true, but faith, it comes direct from Allah." It was a miracle, she thought. Since getting Farid's letter, she had been waking up in the middle of the night, smiling in the dark, stunned by what had happened, and finding herself unable to go back to sleep. "When you left," he said, "I thought if this isn't enough incentive for me to convert, nothing is. And I felt sick, going around here and there, no balance." Once, he said, he missed a flight to Paris, another conference, another paper to present. He misread the gate number and he was late. He ran out of breath along the corridors full of people coming back from holidays, cheerful suntans, and children holding up big Mickey Mouse balloons. By the time he reached the correct gate, it was too late. He collapsed into a chair and took out his inhaler to breathe, just to breathe, and he watched this plane from the window, reversing and moving away. "It burned me up, all that running for nothing." He laughed and put his face in his hands. When he looked up at her, She was smiling at his description of the frantic corridors full of Mickey Mouse balloons. Then the time he was ill, he said, another asthma attack, gales in Aberdeen shaking the trees and him indoors unable to breathe. How long can a night be? How harsh without sleep? Sucking air that would not go in, not go inside. In this helpless state, in this humiliation, the need to pray. This was how it felt, neither lofty nor serene. Not a prayer for the good of humanity nor for success, but just to breathe. What I regret most, he said, is that I used to write things like, Islam gives dignity to those who otherwise would not have dignity in their lives, as if I didn't need dignity myself. A fly hovered over the tray, buzzing. She waved it away. He said, I was a little taken aback. I didn't think of myself as someone who would turn spiritual. I did. I used to feel that there was something inside you very heavy and still. The religious dimension that everyone has? Maybe. It had seemed to her as something asleep, fast asleep, not moving, something she had wanted to come close to, stay near, breathing until it woke. He said, At the end it was one step that I took of wanting it for myself separate from the work, and then it all rushed to me. It felt like that. What does everyone in the department think about this? She asked. Did you tell them? Yes, they think it's midlife crisis. He laughed a little and looked away at the cooperative across the road. She frowned, worrying if in their eyes he had lost his credibility. As a detached Middle East observer, she told him that Yasmin once said that if he converted, it would be professional suicide. I've already made a name for myself, he said. Don't worry, I'm not worried. He was right. She shouldn't worry. Provision came from Allah. It would come from Allah. She shouldn't worry. She said, I admire you so much, and looked down at the grass. When she looked up, there was a kindness in his eyes and his voice. Dahlia was circling the house with her bicycle, the clatter of wheels on the cement of the carport. She looked at Summer and Ray, then she disappeared again behind the house. There's a rat in my hotel room, he said. This made her laugh in disbelief and horror and ask, because she had forgotten to ask, which hotel he was staying in. He named one of the older, more faded hotels overlooking the Nile, not the best of hotels, but still one that should not have rats running about. He had heard the rat at night along the wall near the cupboard. That's terrible, she said, apologetic. This was her country after all. He was her guest. The shower doesn't work, he said. That is worse than the rat, I think. Did you complain? He nodded. They promised to fix the shower. They gave me a pail and a pitcher in the meantime, but they didn't seem worried about the rat. I'm sorry, she said. He had all her sympathy because he looked so resigned. The view is great, though, he said. The room has a balcony, and today at dawn, the river. It was very picturesque. She imagined him standing on the balcony, looking out at the Nile. The hotel was built by the British in colonial times. It once glittered and ruled. Now it was a crumbling, sleepy place, tolerant of rats and with showers that didn't work. But still the view was as before, something natural brimming over the last stretch of the blue Nile before it curved and met with the other river, changed color, and went north. He walked about the view from the balcony, his first impressions of Khartoum. Last night, the dimly lit airport, the quietness, The taxi driver told him that there was a curfew, but taxis to and from the airport had passes. On the way to the hotel, they were stopped at a roadblock, an inspection point. The policeman wore a gray coat, had a gun slung over his shoulder. After an exchange of greeting, he took the pass from the driver, checked it by the headlights of the car. He did not ask Ray for any identification. The streets are dark like you said they were, Ray said. It comes as a surprise, this dependence on the moon and stars. He would not forget this city, he told her. He would remember it for life. There was something in its air, something bleak and delicate, heightened by the flat desert and the domineering sky. He asked her about Durman. Was it far from here? She said, Durman is more beautiful. Across the bridge, down the road from your hotel, saints are buried in Durman. He said, when I was young, my father had old maps, ones on which Eritrea and Palestine existed. I liked looking at them. I used to see the name Durman written near the blue line of the Nile. I would say Durman to myself over and over again, liking the sound of it. They would go and visit Durman then, before they left. There were old houses to walk through, a camel market. She said, all the dust here. I'm worried it's bad for your chest. It's not bothering me. My asthma is intrinsic. The dry weather is good for me. It's very dry here, I noticed. Good for the bones. Old age? She smiled. He laughed and said, when I started praying, my knees hurt, and I also thought, old age, but they don't hurt so much now. I missed all that, you learning to pray, the sound of the garden, a car in the street far away. It's a lonely thing, he said. You can't avoid it. What? The spiritual path. Everyone is on his own in this. Dahlia was trying to haul the bicycle up on the porch. After some struggle, she succeeded, and they watched her cycle between the pots of cacti and bougainvillea, wheels smooth on the tiles of the porch. Let's play a game, I said. I wanted my eyes to shine and please him. We'll give each other thoughts, he said. They would come out of us and then take a shape and color, become tangible gifts. Your turn first, he said. What did you receive from me? I showed him 3 pieces of cloth. I unfolded silk the color of deserts, mahogany wool, white cotton from a cloud. I said, you gave me silk because of how I was created, and you gave me wool to keep me warm. He said, wool because I want to protect you, and cotton because you are clean. Then I looked at what he had received from me, the smoothest bowl, inside it a milky liquid, the scent of musk. Is it perfume? I asked, as if I had given birth and now wanted to know if the child I carried for months was a boy or a girl. No, he paused and spoke slowly. It is something from you that will make me strong. When he named it, he looked away as if he was shy. Admiration, he said.